Thank you, Mr. Fulton. All right, let's begin with our round of questioning. Assistant Secretary, I'm going to begin with you. Again, I really appreciated that you came to Alaska and you were participating in this field hearing on the impact to our coastal communities and how they can be more resilient in the face of ongoing threats from erosion, flooding, permafrost thaw, failing infrastructure. It's all complicated, it's long in duration, and it's very costly. But as I have mentioned, and I just came from giving a speech on the floor before this hearing, part of the challenge that I think we have is that you don't really have a lead agency when it comes to how we deal with these disasters, and particularly as we're talking about tribal relocation. BIA is not formally designated as the federal lead, but I think more and more you're seeing tribes that are looking to BIA as the primary partner coordinating across these agencies and helping communities navigate. You kind of suggested at the hearing BIA and Indian Affairs are not specifically the lead, but they are the lead agency, so almost by default. I want to just have you share, having given some thought since that hearing to how the department and BIA are approaching this responsibility, what kind of a role you see BIA playing in perhaps coordinating long-term tribal resilience relocation efforts. I mentioned in my comments the announcement coming from your department on the tribal community resilience. That helps, but we all know that there's more needed there. So can you kind of give me an update in connecting the dots about how we can address the challenges with lead federal agency and whether or not there's perhaps additional authorities or resources or interagency coordination we need to be looking to?
Thank you very much, Senator. And I was excited to come up and visit Alaska, and I appreciate you and your staff for the hospitality, but also for the ability to show me a really real situation out there. You talk about just having your eyes open. I don't know that, unfortunately, there's a Christmas carol that it will never have the same meaning. It was. I don't know that you can explain it unless you heard that little girl talk about it. And you're right. There are a number of agencies that are involved in the process in Alaska. I think first and foremost, mentioning whether or not there is a relocation. There were. I believe it's like a kind of like a straw poll, right? The folks that I were able to speak to, I felt like the majority of those individuals didn't want to relocate. I'm sure there's some that maybe don't. So I think first and foremost, figuring out that process, and that's going to be a lengthy, involved process in which it's going to take more trips, more talking, more intimate conversations, and tough conversations with whether or not these individuals want to leave, in many cases, the only homes that their families have known for years on end. I think in the role that the BIA serves, we have a permanent footprint in Alaska. We have a regional director there. We have an office there, not specifically that is in Bethel full time, but that is able to get to Bethel, able to meet with the folks in those areas and in the regions where folks might want to relocate. I think that it only makes sense that at Indian Affairs and within the BIA that we're communicating with you and your staff. We're communicating with the committee as much as possible to figure out how we can not just maybe lead the effort currently and moving forward, but also build a team to best serve and make sure that any type of relocation that takes place or any type of rebuilding that takes place, we make sure that those families aren't forgotten. I think it's easy to respond to an emergency at the first step. It's easy to know that there was a tragedy. I think the tough part is sticking around and making sure the job gets finished.
Well, and that's where I want to make sure that we don't drop the ball, that we don't leave the impression that the disaster is now past and all is fine. You have displaced families that may be displaced for a period of time. You mentioned community consensus. Solutions also need to be community-driven. But I think we also need to recognize that even if you have people who want to go back, it may not be safe to go back. When you have land that, again, feels like you're walking on a waterbed or Jell-O pad is what it was described as, or the lands are so contaminated, it is just not safe for you and your family. So these are big decisions, and I appreciate what you're sharing, which is a desire to work with us, to work with impacted communities, but again, recognizing it's not just two communities that we're talking about. It is what happens when the next disaster strikes. And I'm speaking about Alaska's example, but my colleague and friend here is still living with the trauma from the Lahaina fires. That fire may be over. Those people may, in fact, be returning to a place that they barely even recognize, but the trauma from that does not leave them. I'm over my time. I will turn to Senator Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the testifiers. I want to start with you, Mr. Fulton. Nice to meet you. So fiscal year 24 was the last year that IHS hired more employees than it lost. During this administration, IHS has 1,200 fewer employees than it did 2 years ago. That's a 9% reduction. That's a 9% reduction on top of a 30% vacancy rate. And so the committee is a bit in the dark about this new hiring initiative. And we've been trying to understand what you're up to. And I don't mean this to be provocative. I actually just want to know what you're up to. I'll just observe that there are only so many things you can do in terms of recruiting techniques or processing procedures to increase the rate at which we hire people, because so much of it is structural. It's pay, it's whether we have the money, it's housing especially. But I'm interested in what this is, and also, just as a more broad point, the prerogatives on a bipartisan basis of this committee, we should know what it is, and it shouldn't be that we have to pull teeth to figure out what you're up to. We're supposed to do our oversight, but we have a pretty good tradition of being collaborative here, but we can't be collaborative if we don't know what you're up to. So this is your opportunity to tell us what you're up to.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to share. As you mentioned, staffing is probably the biggest challenge that the Indian Health Service faces. It's, do we have the right people there to provide care? And that is a challenge system-wide, both at IHS Direct facilities and at our 638s. And a lot of that will not, as you mentioned, is systematic and will not be solved overnight. But our goal is to make a deliberate push to hire 3,300 new people into the agency this fiscal year. And while we have not hit 3,300 yet, we are seeing several good signs that indicate a genuine interest to come and serve in tribal communities. We've received over 10,000 unique applicants who are interested in over 300 jobs that we currently have posted within the Indian Health Service. We've also seen we have 922 of those already interviewed, selected, and waiting to go through the process with a nearly 80% selection or acceptance rate on those tentative job offers.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you just because we have 2.5 minutes.
Nope,
so
pleasure.
You're telling me the data is encouraging. Okay, great. So get us that data. And I don't know what the regular pace of updates would be reasonable without burdening you with a terrible reporting requirement, but certainly it seems to me monthly, quarterly, whatever, so we know where you're at. That's number one. Number two is I still haven't really heard you characterize this as a reorganization, and this just seems like a hiring push. And it's fine if it's that, but I'm trying to figure out what you're doing differently and if we should be tracking that.
Perfect. So there are two different portions that you may be referring to. One is our hiring surge to get people on board today, which has been enabled because previously HR and hiring efforts were spread across the agency, done in localized area offices. Before I joined, that was unified under a single body. So we're able to work through that process more systematically. And I think that's why we're seeing significantly higher onboard rates than what has maybe been the historical approach. because of systematic changes. But then we are working on a broader realignment to make sure the agency is set up and structured in a way that is focused on the future.
Got it. So with the permission of the chair, can we make a request to you to reduce, just to summarize all of this in writing and don't make us wait 120 days for a letter. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We just need to know what you're up to. And there's lots of times we're adversarial. This is not one of them. We just actually want to know what is going on over here. Is it going well? Do we have visibility into this? If you've got all these, if you're meeting all your marks, awesome. Tell us. If not, we should know that too. So thank you very much.
We can do that, Chair.
Secretary Kirkland, good to see you. The Secretary of the Interior testified in the House that Interior's budget cuts to tribal programs are cuts to programs that are ineffective and laden with overhead. What are we talking about? Which programs are ineffective and laden with overhead?
Thank you for the question, Secretary. I'm sorry. Thank you for the question, Senator. I don't know if you consider the promotion or not, but appreciate it, and appreciate again the time to be here.
Lateral move, yeah.
Lateral move. Maybe it depends on the agency.
Yes.
I guess the state as well. So I think maybe definitely lateral on your part. The budget overall, the core of our budget requests are getting back to the fundamentals of BIA, making sure that we're providing services, making sure that we're being effective, making sure that we're utilizing our workforce development, and also any duplicative programs. So there's a number that you've got, and I'm happy to follow up with you and your staff and get more specific. But off the top of my head, there's duplicative programs, loan programs that USDA offers. There's similar SBA. I'm not happy to dive as deep as you want. I think that. I love the idea of looking at programs that provide the same service and figuring out how they can work together, or maybe even they can be merged. But what you're proposing is a nearly 30% cut to BIA and BIE, and that's not like, businesses when they do cutting like that, they make a 5-year plan. They account for the rate of inflation. They like do it in a way where you can stay operational, right? And these are agencies that were falling massively short before all of this. And so if there's efficiency to find, one of the lessons, it seems to me, of DOGE is it didn't save any damn money, right? Violence to the administrative state might be cathartic if you hate the administrative state. But if you actually want the place to work better, then you have to work a business plan. And it can't just be decapitating agencies that don't have a political constituency that's powerful enough. And so work with us, because we're all for the efficiency too. And we're not sitting here defending a bureaucracy. We're defending these programs that provide services. So if they're doing it in a stupid way, in a duplicative way, in a heavy, too much overhead way, that's fine. Let's talk about that. But a 30% cut and then just saying, well, the reason it's a 30% cut is because they're top heavy. I'm going to need a little evidence for that before I stipulate to it. Thank you. Sorry for going over time.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Armstrong.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. Appreciate you all being here to offer your thoughts. This is a pretty dramatic change, and I'm all for dramatic change to the degree there's a plan. And I'm really here asking questions to understand today, because I think you guys have got a lot of opportunity for improvement, and it looks like you're going after that. But I'll start with on the natural resources management piece of it, because that's a very sizable cut in the space, and I wonder about exactly what you're going after there. And because if we sit here today, we've got high oil prices. A lot of these leases in a lot of these areas have a big opportunity, perhaps, for a pickup in activity. And so I want to make sure I understand that we're not undermining the ability for the Indian Nation and the tribes to be able to see the resources developed on their lands. So maybe if you could talk, you mentioned a little bit in your opening comments about Southern Ute tribes. So maybe Assistant Secretary Kirkland, if you could hit on what's being done differently in that space, that'd be helpful.
I think specifically specifically, Senator, in the referencing of the Southern Utes, and the body would know better than I, but for over 20 years, there's been a system out there, a little tool that Congress came up with called the TERRA, which is the Tribal Energy Resource Agreement that allows and gives tribes specifically greater control over their own resources, their ability to manage those better, their ability to negotiate, whether it's lease or negotiate with industry providers and not having to work through us. So we were able to sign the first ever TERRA agreement with the Southern Ute, giving them more control over their energy production, and that's something that we want to do more of. We want to do more approving those. We also want to do more efficiency in general, and that's something that we talk about reorganization, or we talk about workforce efficiencies. The BIA, there's a lot of dedicated people there. There's a lot of folks that have been there for a long time. But the management layers in the organization structure is the same today as it was in the 70s. So you do have a system where you've got, in some instances, for every one manager, you've got one supervisor. So you've got essentially a supervisor managing one person. So there's a lot of look that needs to be taken there. There's a lot of efficiencies that need to be worked out. And once again, I think that Senator, I've never met you. I haven't had the pleasure, but congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
I'm happy to share my contact information with you. If you've got questions, you can directly reach out. I know that multiple senators on the committee have reached out directly either to our staff or to me personally, and find that I like to think that I'm fairly responsive, and I'm happy to continue any type of conversation at any point that you have, or any questions you want to learn more about, or any topics that you are more interested in.
Okay, and so maybe just a little. So you're expanding the ability for the tribes to take over the management of stuff that used to be done by the BIA, and that's allowing you to reduce your organizational costs.
Yes, sir.
And
not just cost, but efficiencies. They're no longer having to go to the regional office.
Yeah.
For those answers that they have in the past.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that effort, and I think that's a fantastic idea. Is that being spread rapidly to other tribes as well?
Well, we're working on that, sir. First and foremost, we're trying to figure out what took so long in the first place. Why did it take 20-plus years to have one of these resource agreements signed and enacted? The best form of advertisement, everybody thinks oftentimes, especially this being a political setting, is television. You see the flashy campaign commercials or whatever it may be, but the best form of advertising is mouth to mouth, person to person. In this case, tribe to tribe. And the Southern Utes, they're going door to door, telling people and telling other tribes about the how easy we were to work with to get this done, how much we helped, and they're evangelists of this now. They want other tribes to come into this and join in the TERRA. And they've been our biggest champions, and we've gotten a number of tribes since the TERRA signing 2 weeks ago that are very interested in working on joining the Southern Utes in the process.
That's great news. And I think, certainly Oklahoma has very sophisticated tribes that are very capable of managing their own affairs in that regard. So that's a great example of opportunities to reduce costs. Thank you. I'll yield my time.
Well done as an appointed senator. You landed right on the moment. We're all still working on that. Senator Smith.
Thank you to the chair and to the vice chair, and welcome to our panelists today. Vice Chair, I'd like to start by recognizing Chair Deschamps of the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, Gitchionigaming, who is in the audience today. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for joining us. And we'll have many questions which I will submit for the record regarding the President's budget, though I want to associate myself with the Vice Chair's remarks and questions on what's going on and what the plans are. But today I'm actually going to focus my questions to Assistant Secretary Kirkland this afternoon. Welcome. It's good to see you again, Assistant Secretary. So, Assistant Secretary Kirkland, in your role, you're responsible for supporting the Secretary of the Interior in fulfilling this country's trust responsibilities to federal recognized Indian tribes and maintaining those government-to-government relationships between the federal government and Indian tribes on behalf of the Department of Interior. That's correct, right?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. And do you believe that the department is obligated to consult with tribal nations prior to taking any actions that affect those treaty rights?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not trying to trick you here or catch you in any way.
I apologize. I was making sure the talk button was on. I wasn't trying to.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure. So you may know that in January of this year, the Department of the Interior took action to overturn some critical protections for the pristine boundary waters in northeastern Minnesota. These protections were put in place because the area is vital to the health and traditional cultural values and subsistence-based lives of tribal nations, particularly the 1854 treaty tribes. And wild rice, Monoman, is particularly susceptible to the impacts of mining and mining pollution, and that is why these protections were put in place. And then earlier this year, the department issued a statement of administration policy recommending the passage of House Joint Resolution 140, relating specifically to this moratorium on mining in the boundary waters. Were you aware of that before it happened? Does that sound familiar to you at all?
Thanks. Thank you, Senator. No, I was not reached out to by any tribe about that particular matter.
Or the department. You're not aware of what the department didn't reach out to you.
I'm not aware of any tribe reaching out to the department either. No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, so what I'm trying to understand here is that this statement of the statement of administration policy would directly affect treaty rights, and therefore seems to me, according to the law, that tribal consultation would be required. And so this is how it unfolded. There was this statement of administration policy. Then the House, the same day, passed a congressional resolution overturning this moratorium on mineral leases. It was unprecedented use of the congressional review process, I might add, something that was of great concern to many on both sides of the aisle. And then you have the Department of the Interior proceedings. So my question is, are you aware of any formal consultation that has happened as the Department of the Interior is taking these steps that has a direct impact on the treaty rights of tribes in this ceded territory?
As stated before, Senator, I was not reached out to by a tribe for the consultation process or have knowledge of them making or any tribe making a request for that.
So is it your view that the federal government only needs to do formal consultation if a tribe specifically reaches out to the Department of Interior?
It's my view that we want to take that consultation process as seriously as possible, and when a tribe reaches out about an issue that they have, we want to follow up on that and make sure that all due diligence is given.
But do you see that you have a responsibility if the administration, if the department is taking an action that affects treaty rights? Don't you agree that the department has a responsibility to do consultation, that it's not just a reactive stance, it is a responsibility to make sure that consultation happens?
Senator, I'm happy to look into that and find out more information on that, and I encourage you to reach out in the future as well when you feel that there is a consultation that needs to be looked into or hasn't happened or needs to be enacted.
Well, so, I mean, it is my view, and I think that this is backed up by the law, and this is certainly the view of many in Indian country, that the Trump administration, the Department of Interior, did not do the consultation that's required, and in fact, they disrespected the government-to-government responsibility that is owed to these Treaty of La Pointe tribes. And as a result, this has happened without any consultation to date. So you can help fix this by committing to me that you will help make sure that these federal agencies involved in these leases, as this process goes forward, it will be a lengthy and expensive process, help make sure that as this process proceeds, that there will be appropriate tribal consultation.
Senator, we'll commit to always looking to follow the law on all aspects of the trust relationship, including consultations.
Well, I will follow up with you on this, and I will look forward to doing all the work that I can to make sure that those consultation responsibilities are fulfilled. But I find it sort of stunning to hear you say that you were sort of waiting for a phone call from somebody to be reminded that the department has a legal responsibility to do consultation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. Thank you all for being here. Not that you really had a choice, but thank you. Let me, Assistant Secretary Kirkland, start with you. I understand there are reductions at BIA of about 500 staff. Is that correct?
Senator, I couldn't give you the exact number of reductions of staff. What I can tell you is that we've currently enacted and approved the hiring of 400 staffers in critical positions that we're currently advertising on USA Jobs and working to fill those outwardly facing critical roles at the
And what
department.
are the critical roles? Or some of them include BIA officers?
Some of it, from law enforcement officers to regional offices to superintendent offices.
Would you be willing to
agency
give us a
offices.
breakdown of that? That would be very helpful.
I'd be happy to.
If this budget isn't cutting staff, which doesn't sound like it should be if you're actually hiring 400, but I would like to know, and here's why. I am hearing not just from my tribes in Nevada, but our law enforcement as well, that BIA officers are far and few between. They're just understaffed. And I know some of these officers. They want to do right, but they are understaffed. And the way it's broken down into regions, it is very hard to get a response into Nevada. And if you've been to Nevada, and Assistant Secretary, I don't know if you've been to our rural areas, but if you have, you will understand that many of the rural areas where our tribes live, mainly desert, not a lot of interconnectivity, and you could drive for hours before you actually see somebody. And so I need a response time that is immediate, especially if there's tribal crime happening, to keep our community safe. And so I want a commitment if you're willing to help me address this issue, particularly as it pertains in Nevada, with a lack of BIA officers and more staffing that is necessary for our law enforcement in Nevada and in that region. Would you be committed to working with me and provide that as document or that information?
Yes, Senator. Unfortunately, it's also not a problem that's unique to Nevada specifically. So that's something that we're working on all across.
Yeah, I'm from Nevada, though. That's my.
No, I know that.
So that's what I'm getting a commitment from you. Is I want to see what you're doing specifically from Nevada, because I've been hearing about this as long as I've lived there, and we have to address it. And I think if you can address it in Nevada, you probably will be able to address it in other places as well.
And not only happy to get you the information you request. I know. There's a lot of y'all are very busy here with votes, and oftentimes when we're in recess, we're back in the state or in the district, specifically coming up in November. I understand that, but we'll be here all the time.
Good. So will I. I'll be here. I'll be there, and I'll be waiting for your call. I'm going to move on though because I only have so much time.
Let us know when you.
During your nomination hearing last year, I asked you about the detention funding issue facing tribes in Nevada with the 638 contracts. And quite honestly, at that time, and I think the chairman and the ranking member are very aware of this, they had the rug pulled out from under them when their regional BIA office suddenly reinterpreted their contracts and was going to force them to pay for detention services for the pretrial detainees. This is before you even got there. And this is why I asked you at your hearing, your nomination hearing, if you would promise to work with me to address this issue and ensure that open lines of communication are opening. I am still hearing from our tribal law enforcement and tribes that this is an issue for them and has not been addressed. Can you give me an update at all on this issue?
I've got staff behind me that are making a note of that right now, and as soon as we get out of here, we're happy to give you an update.
Please do. I appreciate that. And I would also like, as part of this discussion, and maybe it is time, that we reevaluate the funding levels that tribes with 638 law enforcement contracts are entitled to. Given population growth, price increases, and other costs, I would be interested in addressing that as well. So if you want to make a time, come to my office, sit down and talk with me about all of the above, I will definitely make myself available. Thank you.